I woke up in a hospital bed, broken, barely alive. And the first thing I heard was my wife planning a new life without me. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound that cut through the silence as I drifted in and out of awareness. The crash had been brutal. A tractor-trailer, its driver asleep at the wheel, veered across the center divider and slammed into my SUV head-on. They later told me I had multiple broken ribs, a collapsed lung, my femur snapped like a twig, and a head injury that left my brain swimming in confusion. I was barely holding on. Somewhere through the fog of morphine and pain, I heard the door to my hospital room creak open. My eyelids felt like lead, too heavy to lift, but I recognized the scent that followed. Jasmine and vanilla. Rachel. My wife of 15 years. Then came a tiny shaking voice I'd know anywhere, our 10-year-old son Mason. "Is Dad going to die?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "He's stable," Rachel answered, but then her voice faded off. Like she couldn't, or wouldn't, finish the sentence. I tried to move, to say something and let them know I was awake. But my body betrayed me. I couldn't even twitch a finger. Then I heard another set of footsteps, heavier, deliberate. And a voice that chilled me, Jack Myers. Our neighbor from 2 houses down. Been part of our lives for the past few years. "Did you tell him?" Jack asked. "He's been out since the ambulance got here," Rachel replied, and her voice had gone cold. My mind started spinning despite the haze of sedatives. "Tell me what?" "Listen, kids," Rachel said, her voice turning firmer, more deliberate. "Your dad, he hasn't been honest with us. He's been hiding things. Big things. And this crash, it changes everything." "What kind of things, Mom?" I heard our daughter Ava ask. She's 13. Smart, thoughtful, always watching. The kind of secrets that would have broken this family eventually. But now we have an opening. Her tone had shifted again. Sharper. Almost bitter. "We can move on. Start over. Without your useless father." They didn't know I could hear them. They thought I was still lost in the dark. I would repeat those words later when I spoke to the police. Lying there helpless, I felt my pulse pick up. The monitor reflected it, speeding up with every word. Rachel wasn't done. "I've already drained the bank accounts," she said without a shred of hesitation. "And the lake house. It's already listed. We'll be long gone before he ever wakes up," Rachel said, her voice low but clear. "What about school?" Ava asked hesitantly. "What about my friends?" "You'll make new ones," Jack cut in, his tone too cheerful for the moment. "Better ones. We've been working on this plan for months." Months. Even in my fragile, medicated state, I could feel the fury beginning to bubble beneath the surface. My body was broken, but my mind was starting to piece things together. They had been orchestrating this behind my back for months. "He never saw you, Rachel," Jack went on. "Not really. Never appreciated how much you did, how amazing you are. Always off somewhere, late nights, business trips." "The man I married was a lie," Rachel replied coldly. "And I see that clearly now. They were packing up, taking the kids, the money, my entire life, and just vanishing." Later, when I gave my statement, I told the investigators exactly what I'd heard. They left with everything. Every last dollar. The door creaked open again. "Excuse me," a gentle voice said. It was the nurse. "I need to check on Mr. Reeves." "Of course," Rachel replied smoothly. No hesitation, no guilt. "Kids, say goodbye to your father." I felt tiny fingers rest gently on my arm. Mason's hand. "Bye, Daddy," he whispered. The nurse stepped in fully. "We'll give you a moment," she said softly. I heard the door close behind them. A few seconds passed, then heavy footsteps returned. Someone leaned in close. "I'll make sure they never go without," Jack muttered, thinking I couldn't hear him. "I know her worth. Unlike you." The heart monitor spiked again. Beep, beep, beep. "Heart rate's climbing," the nurse noted. "Let's step out. He needs rest." Once they were gone, I fought like hell to wake up. Every muscle screamed in protest. My eyelids slowly lifted, just a crack. The nurse was at the monitor, her back to me. "Water?" I croaked, barely audible. She spun around, startled. "Mr. Reeves, you're awake." What followed was a whirlwind. Doctors, scans, lab work. A rush of activity, none of it comforting. I was alive, but everything I'd built was gone. The joint accounts, over $2.3 million, completely drained. My family's lake house, passed down through 3 generations, had been listed for sale. I hadn't even known. By evening, the painkillers had dulled the edge of my physical agony, but the emotional weight was heavier than ever. That's when he walked in. A soft knock, followed by a calm, elderly man in a dark suit and a collar. "Mr. Reeves?" he said gently. "I'm Chaplain Sullivan. I heard you could use someone to talk to." I barely registered the chaplain when he entered. Just another face in the blur of medical staff. I wasn't in the mood to talk. But then he said my name, like he truly knew it. Later, I'd explained to investigators how the hospital chaplain had recognized me, something I hadn't expected from anyone in that setting. The old man stepped closer, studying my face. "I thought it might be you," he said softly. "They told me a Malcolm Reeves was admitted, but I couldn't believe it was the same one." He glanced around the room as if checking for prying ears, then lowered his voice. "You saved my daughter's life. Odessa. 5 years ago." My eyes snapped open wider. Very few people knew what really happened in Odessa. Even fewer knew I had anything to do with it. "I never got the chance to thank you," he continued, voice trembling slightly. "The way you pulled those hostages out without a single person getting hurt, they said it couldn't be done. But you did it." "You must have me confused with someone else," I replied on instinct, almost mechanically. He gave a small, knowing smile. "Maybe. But if you were that man, I'd tell you that what you did mattered. That lives were changed because of it." He gently rested his hand over mine. "And I'd remind you that even the longest night ends with morning." When he left, I just stared up at the ceiling, my thoughts beginning to settle. For a decade and a half I had kept my work with Sentinel under wraps. Not even Rachel knew the truth. Everything I did, covert missions, operations across borders, lives saved and enemies made, was kept carefully sealed away from my family life. That double life I fought to maintain? It was unraveling fast. Later that night, as sleep tugged at me, the television hanging from the wall burst to life with breaking news. "Tonight, we can confirm the identity of the operative known only as the Shadow," the reporter announced. "Sources have identified him as American citizen Malcolm Reeves." As they spoke, my driver's license photo filled the screen. Reeves is reportedly responsible for the dramatic rescue of 17 American hostages from a compound in Ukraine last year, along with a string of other high-risk operations over the past 20 years. His identity was no longer a secret. Years spent living in the shadows, guarding his anonymity with meticulous care, were gone in a moment. Just like that, everything he had shielded his family from came crashing into the open. They hadn't known. Not really. Not until they saw my face staring back at them from the evening news. I later told investigators how my phone, recovered from the wreckage and now charging by my hospital bed, wouldn't stop buzzing. 71 missed calls. All from Rachel and the kids. 6 weeks later I was finally standing again, barely, inside the house that used to be our home. Physical therapy had been brutal, but pain was no stranger to me. Military life had hardened me for that. The emotional toll, though, that was something else entirely. The place was a hollow shell. Every room I stepped into rang with echoes of what used to be. Sun-bleached outlines on the walls showed where our family pictures once hung. The furniture Rachel and I had picked out together had vanished. Even Mason's telescope, the one I built with my own hands for his 10th birthday, was gone from the little backyard observatory. I limped into my office and reached beneath the desk, pressing my palm to a concealed biometric scanner. With a soft hiss, a section of the wall slid open, revealing the one part of my life Rachel had never known about. A secure room packed with gear, weapons, encrypted tech, and several different identities. At least this room was untouched. I reached for the secure phone and dialed the only person I knew I could still rely on. "I need Freya," I said into the receiver, my voice flat. 20 minutes later, a sleek, unmarked black vehicle eased into the driveway. The woman who stepped out was tall, with striking copper-red hair and eyes sharp enough to slice through lies. Freya Nakamura, my handler at Sentinel for over a decade. "You look awful," she said with a half-smile, stepping in to give me a cautious hug. "Feel worse," I replied. Inside I laid everything bare. The betrayal, the theft, the kids being taken. When I finally finished, she leaned forward, her voice all business. "So what's the move? The agency can help. We can trace the accounts, tap into global intel. You've got options." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "This isn't about money. This isn't about protocol." She narrowed her eyes. "Malcolm. They took my children. They used them like pawns," I muttered, my voice low and raw. "My own kids, props in their scheme." Freya kept her gaze on me, studying the storm behind my eyes. "What are you thinking?" she asked cautiously. I stared down at the surveillance photos in my hand. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "it's time for the Shadow to come out of retirement. Just once more. One final mission. While I worked through physical therapy, Rachel and Jack had been busy building a new life, funded by my stolen legacy. They'd landed in Colorado of all places. Aspen to be exact. High-end, pristine, and outrageously expensive. They bought a luxury property under Jack's name. Paid in full, my money of course. Freya pulled up social media posts on her tablet, sliding it across the table. There they were, smiling like they had nothing to hide. Jack flashing watches he didn't earn, Rachel posing in fur-lined coats outside fine dining spots. The kids, always in the background, wearing clothes I'd never seen before, faces I barely recognized. Zoe's smile was forced, her eyes distant. Mason looked smaller somehow, like he was fading. They've enrolled the kids at Westview Academy, Freya said, laying down fresh surveillance shots. Rachel drops them off at 8:15 every morning. Jack handles pickup at 3:30. I stared at my children's faces, then at the financial records. She had moved the majority of my savings to offshore accounts before I ever opened my eyes in that hospital. I had to admit, it was cunning. Most of it's in the Caymans, Freya said. But she left a digital footprint. Sloppy in some areas. Jack's burning through it, isn't he? I asked, already suspecting the answer. Roughly 50 grand a month, she confirmed. His appetite's always been larger than his paycheck. Jack Myers, I said, shaking my head. Former investment banker. Bounced from 3 firms for shady dealings. And all that time, right next door, he'd been sleeping with my wife. For over a year it turns out. Right under my nose. Freya hesitated then. Something in her demeanor shifted. There's more, she said slowly. Something you need to hear. What? Jack's been reaching out to some of your past adversaries. Specifically, Victor's son. My blood turned to ice. Victor's son. Arms trafficker. Human exploitation kingpin. A monster. And a man whose brother I'd personally eliminated during a covert rescue op in Serbia. He's offering son everything, Freya said. Your habits. Details about your security systems. Even the names of your kids. My jaw locked. I didn't speak, I couldn't. The rage had turned into something colder, sharper. When's the meeting? I finally asked. Next week, she replied. He wants $4 million for the full package. Perfect timing, I murmured, a cold edge creeping into my voice. A slow, dangerous smile played across my lips. I'll be ready. The very next morning, Rachel's phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize. She answered, cautious. Hello. It's me, I said simply. There was a pause. Silence. Then, uncertainly, she replied, Malcolm, how are you? Alive, I said. Not that you had much to do with that. You don't understand? No, I cut in. I understand plenty. I understand $2.3 million vanished while I was in a hospital bed. I understand you walked away with our kids and haven't looked back. I understand you're sleeping with a man who's planning to sell their names to Victor Drayson. Her sharp inhale was all I needed to hear. She hadn't known. Drew would never. There's a meeting. Next Thursday. He's asking for $4 million in exchange for everything he knows about me, including where our kids go to school. There was a pause, fear, guilt, confusion tangled up in her breath. Malcolm, please. You've got 24 hours, I said. Get them somewhere safe. After that, I can't promise anything. And with that, I ended the call. I knew exactly what would follow. She'd panic. She'd confront Drew. He'd lie. He'd say whatever he needed to stay ahead of the chaos, but I also knew his panic would make him reckless. He'd push his timeline forward. Try to cash in before anything collapsed. The trap was already tightening. Sure enough, that night, Rachel confronted him. Every word of their argument was picked up by the surveillance mics Freya had planted in their house. You said this was a new beginning. Rachel screamed. Not one that comes free. Drew fired back. Do you think Aspen homes and private school tuition grow on trees? You're selling information to criminals. This isn't what I signed up for. Your ex made enemies. Real ones, he shouted. I'm not creating danger. I'm managing it. Taking advantage of it. Rachel's voice cracked. You're selling out my children. Our children now, Drew said with a sneer. Or have you forgotten how fast you left their father behind? Their voices rose until Drew finally stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Rachel, left alone, collapsed onto the floor in tears. And after a long, trembling silence, she made a choice. Rachel called again. And again. Dozens of times. But I didn't answer. I knew what she wanted. I knew panic had set in. But it was too late for comfort. Things were already in motion. Meanwhile, Drew reached out to Victor Drayson, trying to accelerate the exchange. "Situation's changed," he said. "We need to meet now." Exactly as I'd predicted. Through Freya's network, we intercepted the setup. When Drew arrived at the designated location, an elegant suite on the top floor of a luxury hotel in downtown Denver, he wasn't greeted by an arms dealer. "You found me." "Evening, Drew," I said, my voice steady, cold. He stepped through the door and froze in place. "Malcolm," he stammered. What is this?" "Sit," I told him simply. "We're going to talk about loyalty." He didn't move at first. Just stood there, pale, like his blood had dropped out of his body. "Look, I can explain." "You'll return every last dollar you stole from me," I said, cutting him off without raising my voice. "You'll sign a statement admitting you contacted Drayson. Then you'll vanish." His expression shifted. The fear drained, replaced by something sharper, resistance. "Or what?" he snapped. "You going to kill me? The infamous shadow, executing an unarmed man in a hotel room? Doesn't sound like your reputation." I let his words hang in the air, then slowly raised an eyebrow. "Kill you?" I said. "No, Drew. That would be too merciful." I reached into my coat and laid a phone on the table between us. "This device contains every message, every call, every photo you exchanged with Rachel over the past year and a half. Every whisper behind my back while I was gone on assignment. Every plan you made to replace me." I leaned forward just slightly, letting him see the depth of what I knew. "And most importantly," I continued, "the things you said to my children. About me." I slid the phone an inch closer to him. "I'm going to send all of this to Victor Drayson, along with your current address. And I'll include a friendly note about how you plan to cheat him. Undercut the deal." I gave a faint smile. "Cold. Controlled. Drayson doesn't like being betrayed. Ask the last guy who tried." Drew's eyes widened in panic. Then, with a sudden yell, he lunged across the table. But I'd been ready. Despite the lingering pain from my injuries, instinct kicked in. I pivoted smoothly, caught his arm mid-swing, twisted it behind his back, and drove him to the carpet in a single fluid motion. He groaned under my grip, breathing hard. "You ruined my life," he spat. "No," I said coldly, pressing his arm tighter until Drew cried out in pain. "You ruined your own life the moment you made targets out of my wife, my children, and everything I built. I'm just making sure you understand what that costs." With Drew detained, zip-tied to a chair in that Denver hotel room, I moved on to the next stage. Using his phone, I sent messages crafted in his tone. Calm, urgent. Believable. Emergency. Go to the mountain cabin. Bring cash. Tell no one. Rachel didn't hesitate. Fear had already taken hold after our last call. The mention of Victor Drayson had shaken her, even if she didn't want to admit it. She pulled 50 grand from one of the remaining accounts, took the kids out of school midday, and made the 3-hour drive to the remote mountain cabin, the one Jack had bought with my money. But when she arrived, it wasn't Drew who greeted her. It was Freya. Rachel stepped from the car, immediately placing herself between our children and the tall woman waiting at the front steps. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice brittle with nerves. "Someone who works with your husband," Freya replied calmly. "The husband you left behind while he was lying broken in a hospital bed." Before Rachel could respond, her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. A video call. Drew's face filled the screen. Bruised, wild-eyed, and desperate. "Val, listen," he stammered, panic thick in his voice. "He knows everything. Malcolm knows. You have to." The call dropped suddenly. Rachel didn't have time to process before her phone rang again. She answered. "Malcolm," she said, her voice shaking. "Where are my children?" I asked, skipping any pretense. "They're safe," she replied quickly. "Malcolm, please. Whatever you believe." "Put them on," I said. A moment passed. Then she handed the phone over to Zoe and Mason. My voice softened the moment I heard theirs. "How's school? Are you both okay? Are they treating you right?" I listened carefully. Picked apart every word, every hesitation. They sounded shaken but not harmed. That was all I needed to know, for now. When they handed the phone back, Rachel's voice came through again, strained and brittle. "The money, it's gone," she said, barely above a whisper. "Drew invested it. He said he could double it. But most of it, it's already lost." "We can't pay it back," Rachel said, her voice cracking. "I already know where it is," I replied evenly. "Every transfer. Every hidden account. Did you really think I wouldn't have backup systems? That I wouldn't trace my own money?" Her face went pale on the screen. What do you want? She asked, defeated. A divorce. Full custody, I said. And your silence. You can't take my children, she snapped, anger rising. Can't I? I said, my voice turning cold. You were willing to rip them from their father without a second thought. And you stayed silent while Drew handed over their names to a man who traffics in blood and bombs. I'm not taking them, Rachel. I'm protecting them. Outside the cabin, gravel crunched under tires. Two black SUVs came into view, pulling into the long driveway. Men in tactical gear stepped out, weapons holstered but visible. Rachel turned to Freya, panicked. What's happening? Those are federal agents, I said through the phone. Drew's deal with Victor Drayson crosses into conspiracy to commit acts of terror. We've got more than enough evidence to move. I didn't know anything about that, she said quickly, desperately. Maybe not, I said. The investigation will decide. I'm not here to argue guilt. You're having me arrested? Her voice cracked with disbelief. No. I'm giving you a choice. I waited a beat. Option 1. Sign the divorce papers, give up custody, and walk away free. I'll even give you enough to start over, clean. Or, I let the pause settle heavily between us. Option 2. Those agents bring you in for questioning. Your name ends up right next to Drew's on the evening news. Conspirators who tried to sell classified intel to a known terrorist. Tears welled up and began spilling down her cheeks. You do that? To the mother of your children? I didn't flinch. You made your choice the day you stood over my hospital bed and planned your escape, I said. Now I'm making mine. In the end, she signed everything. Quiet, hollow, broken. I arranged for a wire, $200,000. Enough to rebuild, barely. A mere shard of what she and Drew had taken from me. She was no longer allowed to reach out to the children. Not directly. Not through others. Not until they turned 18. At that point, it would be their choice whether they wanted to see her again. Drew, however, didn't get the luxury of waiting. Thanks to the mountain of evidence I'd compiled, his conversations with Drayson, the stolen funds, the documents tying him to attempted conspiracy, he was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. No parole. No deals. 3 months later, I found peace in the simplest place, my new home in the Virginia countryside. Behind the house, I'd rebuilt something that had once meant everything, the observatory. That night, I stood beside Mason, helping him adjust the telescope. There, I said. Right there, you see it? His eyes lit up. Saturn, he whispered, peering closer. I smiled and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Inside, Zoe was playing the piano, something she'd stopped doing during those dark months with Rachel and Jack. With a little encouragement, she had returned to it, and every note she played now felt like a step toward healing. My phone buzzed. A message from Freya. Rachel tried to contact Zoe again through a private account. Don't worry. Handled. I put the phone down without a second thought. The shadow was gone. Retired for good. What remained was just me, Malcolm Reeves. Father. Guardian. Survivor. The nightmares still came sometimes. The crash. Their voices, sharp and cold, spoken when they thought I couldn't hear them. But moments like this? They made all the pain worthwhile. Some things in life are worth fighting for. Some betrayals leave wounds too deep to heal. And some shadows, once cast, never truly disappear. But this is where the story ends. Thanks for walking through it with me. If something in this journey struck a chord, I'd be grateful to hear your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, take care of what matters most. She wasn't allowed to contact the kids, not until they turned 18. After that, it would be their choice whether they wanted to reconnect. Not mine. Not hers. Theirs alone. Drew didn't get off so easily. With the evidence I had, every text, every dollar trail, every whisper to a man like Victor Drayson, the court handed him a 15-year federal sentence. No parole. No early release. Just time. A lot of it. 3 months passed. I was living quietly in Virginia now. Quiet home. Big skies. In the backyard, I'd rebuilt the observatory. The same kind I'd made for Mason on his 10th birthday, before it all fell apart. That night, he and I stood under the stars, aligning the telescope. He grinned when he caught Saturn's rings in the lens, gasping like it was the first magic he'd ever seen. Inside the house, Zoe was practicing piano again. She'd stopped during those months with Rachel and Drew. But something about being home, really home, made her find her way back to it. My phone buzzed. Rachel tried to reach out to Zoe on social media, Freya wrote. Handled. I didn't even reply. Just put the phone down. The shadow was done. That chapter was closed. Now I'm just Malcolm Reeves. A father. A man who still wakes up some nights in a sweat, hearing things they thought I couldn't hear. But I'm also a man who chooses to stand up. To fight. For what matters. Some things are worth it. Some betrayals you don't walk back from. And some shadows? They never really leave. But sometimes you get to choose what steps out from the dark. This was my story. Thanks for hearing it. If you've been through something like this, if you've had to rebuild after the wreckage, tell me. Share your story below. Maybe someone else needs to hear it too. Until then, hold on to what's real. Because when the shadows fall, it's the light you fight for that keeps you going.